Good. Good morning. Can you hear me? It's fine. Okay. Tell me, are we being recorded and are we live? Oh, okay. So that I. Eh? Yeah. Colleagues, comrades, compatriots, friends, good morning. Welcome to the Nelson Mandela University in what is now termed the reflective session of the annual Youth Convention. I believe, Doc Sebake, this has been now running for 5 years, isn't it? Yeah. This is the 5th edition concerning this convention. Let me greet firstly the Deputy Vice Chancellor of People and Operations, the new Deputy Vice Chancellor, Mr. Lutano Jack. Yeah, we will celebrate soon because we're very happy with this appointment by the university. So well done, Gosiam, and thank you for joining us. Welcome. We also have the acting acting dean of students with us, Dr. Bernard Sebake. More like 1 foot as a sheriff in. Sijongile nayo Mr. Lutano Jack landwenze kapha. Siyayifuna nayo. Welcome, Dr. Bernard Sebake. Thank you for putting this together. Of course, the whole team from the Division of Student Affairs, Department of Student Governance, all colleagues basically in the Division of Student Affairs and Department of Student Governance who produced us, the likes of Mrs. Queenie, Karen, you name them. They are also here. Thank you for being so consistent over the years, producing layers and layers of student leaders in this university to be where we are today. So, Sianamkela Nani Karen and your team, good morning. We also have visitors from the National Youth Development Agency, very important people. Board members are here with us. We also have colleagues from government. The Department of Small Business and Development is here. Black Management Forum is also in the room. Also colleagues from other universities. Rhodes University, I see Mr. Orik Ofei and your team of the SRC. Sianamkela Makaban, welcome to Nelson Mandela University and thank you for traveling all the way for so many years consistently to be part of this program. I also see the student leadership, the EFF Student Command, Shumile Minyaka, Molweni comrades. I also see the leadership of SASCO. SASCO will rise again. Don't give up, comrades. The struggle has ups and downs. I don't know other organizations. No, really, I don't know them. If they are here, Siani Bulisa. We also have Black Lawyers Association leadership. It's very strategically the society of black people, black professionals. We also have colleagues from the National Treasury, Sarah Mukwebo, thank you for coming. The O.R. Tambo School of Leadership, and also generally, House Comms. Greetings to the House Committee leadership. In essence, everyone in the room who has joined us, student activists, community activists, youth activists, scholars, practitioners, professionals, everyone concerned about the struggles of young people in the room this morning, molweni. My name is Dr. Pedro Mzileni. I teach sociology to first years at the University of the Free State in Bloemfontein. I've been there now for a year, but my roots are in Nelson Mandela University. So this is my home, and it's good to be back home this morning. And I've been given the privilege to facilitate the first session, which is from now up until lunch time. We will have 3 addresses up front from the DVC, followed by the acting Dean of Students, followed by the board member of the NYDA, Mr. Tulisa Mandela. After those 3, we will then have a Q&A to these 3 speakers. Afterwards, we'll go on a tea break. Then we will have 2 panels. That will run for 2 hours. Then my job afterwards will end when we go on a lunch break. So that is how the session is going to look like this morning. Let me also greet my co-facilitator, uDadewethu uYondela Mwanda, ndiyabulisa Dadewethu this morning. And I look forward to a very productive working relationship today. So, let me not eat the points of the DVC and the acting deputy dean, but let me say this. We are meeting under the theme, Reflecting Renewal and Agenda Setting for the Acceleration of Youth Development, Reaffirming the Commitment for Cultivating Youth Agency. What does that mean? Or, from where I'm seated, what does it mean? So that we set the tone for today. The first thing that I want to say, standing here, I feel very small, given the intellectual program of this university and the size of this university and what it represents. Nelson Mandela University is one of the most underspoken about universities in the country as compared to the pedigree and the weight of the intellectual program it carries. This is a university in 2017 that took a decision to be renamed after Nelson Mandela. The figure. Before that, it was named after the metro, which is the city. Kwame Nkrumah calls it the metropolis, which is a city of imperialism. A city that Fanon says it's a colonial zone divided into 2. One zone for the settler, the other zone for the native. And we see that in this city. We also see that in this university. The metropolis is divided into 2. One side is Europe, occupied by white people, occupied by property owners. It's a clean, cemented zone of foreign European nationals. The other zone is the ghetto, the township, Africa, the black zone of subhumans, the township, occupied by black people. That is the history of this city. That is the history of this university. You have South and North Campus, two centers of research and knowledge located in the Summerstrand suburb. Then you have Missionville, standing on the opposite zone, a campus of black people, a campus of subhumans. So the multi-campus structure of the university resembles also the history of the metropolis, the division of two zones, one for whites, one for blacks, one for research, one for teaching. So dismantling the university in 2017 from being attached to the metropolis and now moving it and attaching it to the figure was a decolonial attempt, right? To birth now a new democratized university that will be one, that will treat all people in it, students, staff, researchers, scholars, as a common people committed to one paradigm of knowledge, a knowledge of transformation and decolonial efforts. That's what this university has set itself as an agenda to drive a scholarship that will at least resemble the political convictions of Mandela the revolutionary and the ideas he espoused. Now, when you meet in a youth convention, in a university, because I must emphasize this point, DVC, the convention is taking place in a university. What does that mean? It means that, or it serves as a reminder that there is no paradigm of action in society that takes place without knowledge. Everything you do is informed by knowledge. Your attitude and your perceptions and your culture and your language, they emerge from a particular paradigm of knowledge. In the NYDA or in National Treasury, when you talk development, the development you talk about is not existing in a neutral terrain. It's a development that comes from a specific paradigm and a specific knowledge set of ideas. It's not just development on the sky. So the development you advance in your institutions, it's a development that comes from a particular paradigm. And the question is, which paradigm, Shem, could it be? Are you advancing development of imperialism? Are you advancing development that will reproduce slavery? Or are you advancing development that will deliver liberation? You've been in that institution now for 5 years, I don't know, some of you 15 years, 20 years even. 20 years, this paradigm of development you've been driving, where is it taking society? Is it taking society to a liberation, or is it just reproducing patterns of imperialism? The only way to know which paradigm of development are you using is to revisit the knowledges that produced that concept of development you are using. Hence, therefore, a university is very integral in everything we do in a society because it is the only terrain tasked with the duty to produce knowledge that informs action and practice in society. Are we together? So, universities, therefore, as terrains of knowledge, they play that crucial role in society. Right? They are sites of knowledge. Knowledge, again, Molatel, it's not information. Knowledge is not documents. The difference. Let me repeat that point. Knowledge is not information. Knowledge is not documents. Knowledge is a system that informs everything that you are. Right? If young people are trapped in the township for 30 years and they don't seem to escape this poverty, right? Then you need to revisit which knowledge set have we been using to identify this youth and the patterns we want them to escape this poverty. Is it really working? Is it fit for purpose? It's knowledge that creates that. Apartheid and colonialism were first conceptualized as knowledge first. They were philosophies first, before they were implemented as systems to oppress people. There are philosophers who sat down in a university and they thought of them as philosophies first. Right? You can't oppress a people without conceptualizing them as subhumans first. Because if I want to go take your land and subject you into a life of being a laborer forever, I must first convince you in knowledge terms that you are subhuman because you are black and I'm human because I'm white. Therefore, you as a subhuman must be subjected to a life of slavery and being a laborer forever. And as a white person, I must own the means of production. That logic of colonialism started as a set of philosophies first. It started in the terrain of knowledge first, before it was driven as a physical, material force. Right? And indeed, the leadership, you see this today. Who is the cleaner in South Africa today? It's a black woman, isn't it? Who was the cleaner 200 years ago? It was a black woman. Right? Who was sweeping the streets 400 years ago as a slave? It was a black man and a black woman. Who was sweeping the streets this morning when you came to this campus? It was a black woman and a black man. Who was the security guard at the boom gate when you came in? It was a black man and a black woman. So the structure of racial capitalism inherited from slavery 500 years ago, it is still alive today, because it was conceptualized first as a knowledge set, as a philosophy, that ended up being naturalized in your brain. So conventions, youth conventions set 500 years ago to conceptualize how do we enslave these blacks forever. So if you are to now decolonize that society, liberate it, dismantle these paradigms, and build a new liberation force that will give dignity to young people, students, and black people, you've got to be serious about the knowledge that you produce in a university first. So that you don't go carrying a development basket of imperial concepts that will keep your people locked in poverty forever, even when you are in power. Are we together? So, I therefore invite everyone in this room to engage with a disruptive attitude, because clearly all the concepts we've tried are not working. All the concepts we've tried so far are not working. And they keep giving these concepts new names, Chairperson. Inclusive development, sustainable development, women's development, youth development. African development, global South development, development. It's not working. Africans are still trapped where they were trapped 500 years ago, today. So if you are in this room and you are coming up with already tested knowledges that are Googled and are not working, you're in the wrong place. We are looking for new, innovative, disruptive ideas that are emerging from the convictions and the authentic souls of our people. Speak according to the frustrations and the rhythm of your people. because you know what they want and you know what they deserve. We want less concepts. Africans now deserve justice. They deserve love. They deserve compassion. Those are the things lacking in the world. We don't need more computers now. You know, new apps. No, NYDA, we have a new app. Yeah, we have a new app. There's too much digital technology crap not working out there. But there is so much less DVC of compassion, love, and justice, which is what the world needs. Decolonial, disruptive attitudes that will shift the script as we know it. So I invite you to be productively and epistemically disruptive, and also have epistemic integrity when you contribute. What does that mean? Epistemic integrity means you call things by their names because you're in a university. Scholars in a university have the privilege, you are the only ones who have the privilege to call things by their names. Don't tell us these students are previously disadvantaged. These are black students. Previously disadvantaged. What is previous about the oppression? It's taking place now. You know? Have epistemic integrity to call things by their names, because in the terrain of knowledge in a university, it's only us who are supposed to see things first before society does. We are supposed to make things clear that are not clear for society. That is why we're in the terrain of knowledge. If the status quo wants to hide something for society, as people in the university, as intellectuals, we must reveal those things to society. That's what I call epistemic integrity, to call things by their names. That's what we're looking for today. So this badge of being a Rhodes person, put aside today. You're not speaking for the status quo, for a system. You are speaking for the liberation of your people. You call things by their names. And what I like here is that we are in Nelson Mandela University, a liberated zone, where you are allowed to call things by their names. In this university even allows you to criticize itself. That's how amazing it is. I wrote my PhD against the university, and it passed. Yeah? So it's a liberated zone, right? It's not an old-fashioned Afrikaner, Dutch, English institution that has brands to protect and all these nonsensical things that shouldn't apply in a public university concerned about knowledge. Nelson Mandela University allows you to say whatever you want because it's a liberated zone. It even allows you to speak against itself. That's how serious it is about Mandela's liberation agenda in the terrain of knowledge. So, I am too small to introduce the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Peoples and Operations. I said most at the beginning, I'm just a lecturer, and you can see how far a lecturer is from a Deputy Vice-Chancellor. I am extremely far. I must first pass the HOD in my department first before I even reach anywhere else. So I am an extremely small figure in the university system with very little knowledge, you know. Oh, he's up. Okay, let me invite the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Mr. Lutano Jack, to come give the welcoming address. Thank you very much.
This machine, I have to keep away, even though I'm not going to project.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Pedro. I think you've made my work much easier with your opening remarks. Good morning. That's how I've decided to greet people instead of doing what Pedro was doing. Of course, I understand why he's doing what he was doing. But I've also have got to greet you in an African way. So in an African context, they say indwendwe ziyabukwa. So let me also greet our visitors in our midst. Thank you so much for joining us. Some of you are now part of us, and we are happy that you are part of us. We want you to continue to be part of us. So we don't take your presence here for granted. So greetings to all of you leadership. The reason why I'm greeting you in the manner in which I'm doing is because part of what we want to undo is the entrenchment of hierarchies in our society. Relating in terms of hierarchies as opposed to relating in terms of what we know and what we can offer or contribute. That's one thing. That's one campaign I'm pursuing, and I hope that I will be able to persuade those who are close to me to unlearn hierarchies and learn interfacing with one another as purely as human beings who are concerned about the future, of our society, regardless of the positions that society has given us. Because sometimes we tend to hide our ignorance behind the positions that you hold. So I'm still new in this thing. Today is the 6th, so it's my 6th day as the DVC. So So I can't make any reference to it. I can only make reference to my immediate position as the Dean of Students. So you say you are a Dean of Students, but you can't offer anything. You are just known as the Dean of Students. But if you are asked, but what is your legacy? What have you offered? What difference have you made in the lives of the students? Nothing. You hide behind authority. So that's what we're trying to do, and thanks to all of you, particularly to our guests, as I've said, as well as to the Rhodes SRC colleagues. They've been consistent in attending these sessions, and I'm glad that they have come to this. What we've termed a reflective session. So it's not your classical annual convention. I said to the now acting Dean of Students, when we conceptualized this, I did not know that by the time we get here, he will be the acting Dean. So I said to him, let's sit back and pause and reflect. And let's not reflect only amongst ourselves. Let's bring the community that we've been working with to help us set the agenda for this convention, for the next 5 years. So that's the primary objective. The primary objective is to set an agenda for the convention for the next 5 years. So we reflect back in order to prospect. In other words, we retrospect in order to prospect, basically. And we've got capable young speakers, unlike myself, who will be able to then help us with that type of reflection. So that's basically the primary purpose of this session. So I will just briefly, and Pedro has helped me in this regard. I'll just briefly provoke you with just a few statements, and then sit down. The continent is young, and in 2055, if I'm not mistaken, or 2050, the continent will be constituting, in terms of its population, it will be constituting the quarter of the world population. And by then, it will be much younger than what it is now. Now, the critical question then is the extent to which we then succeed as the continent to transform this demographic this demographic advantage into a dividend. Failure to do that, it may then lead into a demographic disaster. If we don't transform the fact that in South Africa, we've got a population that is dominated by young people than adults, if we don't harness that demographic advantage into a dividend, we are then likely to have a demographic disaster. So that's the first point that I really want to I want to make. So therefore, now because I've been working on this and I've been challenging, I'm now going to challenge him in public, Bernard. I've been challenging him to write on this as well as he writes on other things. Because I've been working on working on the youth development space. I think I've read almost all documents that have been produced either by the United Nations Agenda 2030 for Youth, be it various pieces of the AU on youth development, as well as our own. But as Pedro was saying, you've got all those beautiful, as we normally say, policies. But have they been able to make a dent in terms of qualitatively improving the quality of life, for young people, for the continent? I'm emphasizing the continent because we just can't extricate ourselves as South Africa from the continent, whether we like it or not. Of course, probably mentally we can extricate ourselves, but materially we just can't insulate the continent. South Africa from the rest of the continent. So, which then lends me to this question of, and Pedro has alluded to this point. What is our underlying theory of development? Not just youth development, but development. Of course, as South Africa, we've spoken about improving the quality of life. Understanding development is about improving the quality of life, of the people. But there is an interesting definition, of development developed by India's Nobel laureate economist Amartya Sen, who conceptualizes development as freedom. So as development is freedom, which is basically the ability for people to choose the type of lives they value. So in other words, development is about enhancing choices to citizens to live the type of lives they value. And then he then talks about a capabilities approach. You can Google, you will find, I think his book was, but I checked that, I think 10 years ago. But last time I checked, one of his books was available online free. And then he talks about a capabilities approach, that development is about empowering people such that they've got capabilities to live the types of lives they want to live, and that development is primarily about holistic well-being of the people, and is about human flourishing. That's what Amartya Sen, that's how he conceptualizes development. But in the context of our own, what then becomes the point that I don't want to belabor? What then becomes the underlying philosophy behind our own conceptualization of youth development, as a country? Whether NYDA board member, whether we are conscious or subconscious about it, there is an underlying philosophy behind youth development in the country. Now some people normally say, I'm neutral, don't be ideological, you like theorizing, forgetting that what creates even that thinking is a particular set of ideas. But probably these people are not conscious about the fact that they are either perpetuating a particular set of ideas or acting against a particular set of ideas. So the only point I want to make in this regard is that perhaps one of the lessons that we need to learn, and I was doing this because I was reviewing the literature in terms of how Afro-Americans have developed education for Afro-Americans, for Black Americans, in other words. And the point they are making is education for Afro-Americans is steeped on the history, culture, and values of them as Afro-Americans. In other words, it's steeped on the African, on their history as Africans, who ended up in America for reasons that I think all of us know, and is steeped on their culture. And because of miseducation, as a James Woodson, I think it's James Woodson, as he would say, because of miseducation, we tend to undermine, and these are some of the dangers that our country has made. This is the biggest weakness, actually, of the post-1994 period. The relegation of culture into the margins in terms of everything that we do as a society. And yet in culture there is language. And in language is your well-being. It's your values. And in culture is your worldview. That's why Ubuntu is reduced into a value. And yet Ubuntu, it's a way of life, it's a way of being. Ubuntu talks to our epistemology and it talks to our ontology, if I were to pretend to be academic a little bit. It talks to how we view reality, how we view the world, and it talks to our being. It talks to our being. So maybe we need to ask ourselves, what is the underlying value system, cultural ethos, and historic context that our youth development trajectory is based on? And what kind of a young person does it seek to create? And again, having reviewed this literature on Afro-American education, part of the values of their education is to foster the type of education system in Afro-Americans that will make them love their society and want to serve their communities. Now, I'm not sure whether our education system, and when I'm saying education, I'm not only referring to higher education, I'm saying our entire education system, whether it encourages our young people to love their society, to love their people, to love their communities. So I'm saying maybe that's one aspect of reflection that we need to that's one aspect of reflection that we need to ponder on. I think we have dealt with this aspect of whether has our agenda been fit for purpose, and if it has, how do we measure it? Can we? Of course, Bernard is going to talk about this in terms of the little contribution we have made over years as the convention. But again, perhaps to just emphasize the point that youth development in our country, I don't think that it can be contextualized outside our history, and outside the structural configuration of the South African society, as well as outside the systemic configuration, of institutions of our society. Systemic as well as structural configuration of the institutions of our society, not just institutions of the state, important that as it is, but also the private sector, a civil society, as well as the fourth estate. Do you know the fourth estate? Navumela phansi. Okay, you can Google. So I'm saying we cannot. And I'm not one of those who say the 1994 project was a mistake and all of that. No, far from it. Actually, it was not. It was not a mistake. But I just think that one fundamental mistake that we have made and we continue to make, and this is worrisome, especially with regards to young people, is the mobilization of the agency of all of us to continue to be our own liberators, and replacing it with a culture of dependence. And this is a South African, unfortunately, this is a South African phenomenon. It's not an African phenomenon. Have not succeeded in mobilizing, I hope that we will, Bernard, in mobilizing funding to take, to have leadership exchange between our student leaders and leaders on the African continent, to just give them exposure. And I normally make this simple example in relation to us. And I said this when I was engaging student leaders here on campus, I think 3 months ago. I asked them a simple example: who runs hair salons downtown? Just shout an answer. Yes. Yeah, Zimbabweans. Yes. Who runs spaza shops in our villages and townships? Yeah. 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 Before 1994, who ran these? Exactly. Exactly. Now, here on campus, we've got 20 campus businesses run by students. And fortunately, one of the thriving ones is a driving school run by a student from Limpopo. He started with 1 car. Now he's got 6 cars. He employs about 7 fellow students. He passes no less than 260 learners per annum. He makes no less than 120,000 a month. I'm saying that's happening here on campus, here at Mandela University. So we've got to multiply those experiences. We've got to multiply. So he was telling me that, Edin, I've bought my parents a Ford Ranger. It's going to be delivered. I'm going to surprise them. I'm saying he's a student here. He's employing fellow students. He was doing engineering. Now he's doing a postgraduate diploma in business administration to improve his skills in terms of running his. His cars, they are parked here on campus. I'm saying it's a business that is here on campus. He stays in the residences here on campus. Why? Because exactly a hand up, not a hand out. So an agency, individual agency as well as a collective agency. So I had quite a number of points, but I'm not going to be that long. I'm just putting these points. Some of them I'm not going to elaborate. So therefore, as I said earlier on, I do think that in the milieu that we find ourselves, we need to critically examine the role of education in either reproducing the status quo or transforming it. And I'm saying the education system, not basic education or higher education, not the mechanical organization of the two. There's a difference. The education system is about the type of objectives that we have set for our education system and the extent to which we prosecute it such that it delivers on those objectives, regardless of how it is organized. There must be synchrony between the education system, in the entire education system. It must be able to, there must be clear articulation pathways from basic education up to post-schooling education. And we've got to ask ourselves, are we perpetuating the status quo, or in other words, are we reproducing the status quo, or are we working against it? Do we have an education system that reproduces inequalities? When I'm saying the status quo is inequality, poverty, unemployment, gender-based violence, all the social ills. Is our education system geared to foster into society young people who militate against the status quo, or does it foster into society young people who perpetuate the status quo? In other words, is it an instrument of oppression, or is it an instrument of transformation? And if we miss this area, that's why it's part of the focus areas of the foundational document for the convention. If we miss this area of education, we must just forget, we must just close shop and go home and sleep. I'm serious. And in my books, extend this thing of education to community education, to informal education, to non-formal education, as well as to formal education. So the interrelationship between the three, I'm sure those who are doing education here would understand. I don't have time to explain those things. What is non-formal, what is informal education. I'm sure you know formal education, all of you. And then the exercise of the function of leadership, I think I spoke to this a little bit. But I would encourage you to read a paper by Funmi Oloskisin. I think last time I checked, she was at the London School of Economics on leadership. She delivered, I think 2 years ago, if not 3 years ago, online, the annual Thabo Mbeki lecture. And she talks about two types of leadership infrastructure for the continent. One, she refers to hardware, to the hardware part of leadership, and the second one is the software. The hardware type of leadership, she refers to institutions, structures, and elected leadership, like yourselves and so on. And she says, as well as policies and everything else, acts and things like that. And she says, we master that aspect, including, for that matter, the formal democracy. You know, the formal democracy, every 5 years we go for elections. Which was not there, by the way, on the continent. This thing of 5 years is new. I'm not sure whether you know about it. I'm not sure whether you know the history of 5-year electoral cycles on the continent. And then she says, then there's the software infrastructure of leadership. And the software part refers to how we interact, how we enact the function of leadership, how we relate. And her view is that's where we are failing. How we activate the people to journey with us as leaders. And how we activate people to be part of, to be their own liberators, you know, if you like. And she says, actually, countries that succeeded to a certain extent to mitigate the adverse effects of COVID mastered this aspect of the software of leadership, not the hardware part. I mean, the hardware part of leadership, you go to America if you want to see the devastating effects of it during COVID. So as I sit down, I think this session, therefore, has got a responsibility to help all of us on ways of placing youth development on a new trajectory over the next 5 years. To ask questions, as Pedro was asking, are there alternatives to the current approach? If there are, what are those alternatives? And ask the question, which was asked by Mcebisi Jonas, I think, in our second convention, if it was not the first year. I think in our second, if not the first, I can't recall now. Are we really thinking? It sounds like an irony. Are we really thinking? If we are we acting on our thoughts? I think I talked about just setting an agenda. And then, of course, we've got to maximize the opportunity of utilizing the university as a place and space. I think, Pedro, you made this point. But not just as a place and space, but as a place and space for experimentation and incubation. And I think in the area of entrepreneurship, I think we're doing well, relatively well, but we are not yet there. Karen is outside. We're not yet there. Oh, okay. We're not yet there. But I think we're doing well if you compare us with other universities in the country. I think we're sitting right there in the top 5 nationally in terms of creating a conducive environment for those who want to be entrepreneurs to be able to test, their ideas. And we're now evolving, for instance, the Mandela Hub, for youth entrepreneurship and social innovation. And next year we'll launch our Center for a Rapid Youth Entrepreneurship Incubation. We hope that we'll have the minister. I hope that we'll invite the NYDA. Younger, I'm sure you're going to be here. It's compulsory that you come here to the launch of that, and we also want to launch an annual conference, a reflective conference that brings together the academy and industry in the area of youth entrepreneurship, connect the industry and the academy, basically, as well as practitioners in this space, including younger, what we spoke about, having annual awards, annual youth entrepreneurship awards, initially focusing on the province, so that those young entrepreneurs in the province who are doing well in this space, we can be able to. So we hope that we'll be able to partner with various organizations in this regard. And then, of course, lastly, we're wanting to then launch, I know in the program, I've been reflecting on this, Bernard. I know that I'm the culprit here. We're saying think tank. Yes, it's a think tank, but I want us to probably just call it Youth Development Futures Strategic Advisory Group. Here and after referred to, not necessarily calling it a think tank. It must not be just like, you see, people, they go into a conference, those of you who are political activists, and then say, immediately after a conference, say, it was a watershed conference. I mean, when we grew up, when we were taught politics, we were told that something becomes a watershed when you see the outcome, the result, the impact. And then then you say it was a watershed because it changed the course of life. Not that immediately after the conference, because they elected because their faction won the day. They say it was a watershed. So I was thinking about that, saying no. We must succeed, supported by the youth, Madiba's Youth Lab. Once then it's known as a place where, if you want fresh ideas on youth development, it's a place to go to. And then people themselves will then refer to it as a think tank, not us just calling it a think tank. Before we see the result. In case it fails, and then and then people then say, hey, there was no thinking in creating that think tank. Colleagues, enjoy this session. Thank you so much. Yeah, because.
Thank you very much, TVC, for those opening remarks. We are about 26 minutes behind schedule, but I promise you we're going to catch up very soon. Let me invite Dr. Sebake to just emphasize one or two or three items reflecting on the journey in the past 5 years. And then once Dr. Sebake is done, if Mr. Ndlela, you can follow thereafter, give your input, then we move to Q&A afterwards. Dr. Sebake.
Well, thanks very much, colleagues. yeah. I'm really just going to expand from, all right, from few, I'm not sure why it's not showing there. From few things that the DVCF actually, alluded. I did package a small presentation that I just wish to share, but also of importance is to try to be as scientific as possible in dealing with how have we traversed from 2018 to where we are in terms of the work we've done in the convention. You'll pardon me, Petro, if I'm going to be mimicry, if I'm not going to mention something that is catalytic, that is new, that has not been tried before, that can interrupt the status quo. But I think as we plan moving forward, we've got that responsibility to try to really, sit back and say, whether we had this convention for the past 5 years, has it been a talk show, or where has it ignited to change the work that we are doing as an institution? And hence I decided to theme this presentation around what I've actually reflected there. Maybe before I get into the presentation, I just need to share a little bit in terms of how this convention was catalyzed. When I joined the university in 2018, it was the period in which we must finalize the framework and implement immediately. Dr. Mzileni, you are aware of the journey. Karen, you are aware of the journey. There are others that I can mention are not here, who played a role in trying to really think out of the box of what actually we're trying to resolve here. But I think it's important to also share that if you look at the outcomes or the period of fees must fall, one of the key issues, and I'm sure DVC will share sentiments with me, that a group of young activists who are students here, together with the DVC, it was before my arrival, sat down and asked themselves, because the understanding of fees must fall is that it's not an isolated struggle in the broader picture. Once we are done with the fees must fall, then what is next? So if you connect the outlook of the society and the struggle of fees must fall, you'll realize that there's more work that requires to be done so that we change the material condition of the majority. Now, one of the key aspects was that we see many student leaders, and this is a national matter, who move out of the university, they take time to connect with the society, precisely because they have not utilized the space when they are in the university to really be, catalyze their efforts towards connecting with the outlook of the society and intentionally resolve those challenges that you find in the community where we all belong. Now, the Youth Convention was to build that agency between what we do here as the university and in a broader scheme of youth development. And one of the key drivers, now I'm trying to also be scientific, Ujola will agree with me, is that here at Mandela University, we have changed the narrative of student affairs and how it has to function and how does it connect with the society, in particular to be intentional to drive youth development. Hence, when we critiqued, we wrote a paper collectively that talked to the attributes that are required in student affairs because, we traverse student affairs that were post office. Everything that they don't know where to fit it in the university, let it go there. Hence, we are among the universities that are no longer even student affairs. We've got student life and development, which is a culmination of repositioning ourselves to ensure that we are repurposed to address the issues that are pressing, that are about really shaping the mindset of our own students as young people. Having said that, then this convention said, but we ask ourselves a typical a question of what exactly are we trying to resolve here? And I just want to demonstrate it with this particular slide. If you look at the peak, that's where we come from in any way. That's where majority, the worst case, we come from. We come from, rural areas. We come from squalors, and that's exactly what the convention has to change. Because we believe that a young lady or a young person or a young man who grew up there must not be the same when he arrives at the level of really being an active citizen. He must be able to cultivate some development that are able to change the material conditions of those people that you see. They are staying in a very, dilapidated area. What you'd expect there is extreme poverty, it's unemployment, and the worst if we don't have those reservoirs of those who are unemployable. Because we have to talk about unemployment, but with capacity, but there is also those who are unemployable given the material conditions, and therefore then it grows what we call social ills. You will not, experience the essence of social cohesion in a society that gels together under those conditions. There's always tricky challenges. That challenges, one's growth, hamstrung progress, and agenda for transformation and development. So those are challenges that we come across. Worse, you wouldn't expect health services to thrive in that area, and as a result, it becomes a challenge to really expect a mindset that is able to catalyze development from that condition. But however, we've got the responsibility to really change the landscape of that unrosy picture that we see there. Obviously, the famous house that we all know, which then repositioned Mandela University as an institution that is really catalyzed through transformation. It actually wishes to and deliberately address the challenges of African people who, in any way, come from those rural areas, come from those squalors that we wish the will and what I normally term the exchange controls, be that in the hands of the majority. And also, we really connect that through our value system and talk directly about what we require to do. We have to deal with the issues of innovation. We have to deal with issues of research and impact that is able to address those rosy picture in the society. That's what we stand for. I'm going to then deal with what anchor this convention. We say that the National Youth Policy is an important piece of legislation that is very important to direct our efforts. It then brings us to the National Development Plan 2030, which is a Bible that says by the time we arrive at 2030, this is what we should have been achieved as the country. But the fundamental challenge is, are we there yet? And which I think Dr. Mzileni is exactly the interruptive minds that you said must be produced in this convention. Of course, the Pan-African Agenda 2063, it tells us about a number of issues, such as creating safe communities, such as really defining Africa that thrive, that really attain its own sovereignty, that is able to liberate itself, that is able to self-organize and be able to really cultivate the agenda for development. Those are the key policy drivers that says to us, we've got that responsibility to catalyze agency. And Youth Convention is that center of convergence that was then introduced to really ignite those ideas that are interruptive to the status quo. In the bigger scheme, if you look, there are a number of theories that catalyze what you call leadership. But what we buy into as the university is transformative leadership theory, precisely because we understand that the question of changing the social conditions of the society will never be a project. It's a program that has to be, continuously be pushed as we really push back the frontiers of poverty, inequality, and as we move forward. Again, what we have been able to then seek to really address the change that we have to put into place. The convention was firstly catalyzed through understanding that our life keep on evolving, and the more development agenda is being cultivated, the more complex our life become. And if you really look at the system combo, it is catalyzed through a complexity theory. It also needs what we call system thinking, system design, and system development. Therefore, we're untangling these systemic challenges that we have to be able, and to do that, there are a number of ways that I'm going to really indicate. Hence, our themes were catalyzed around education and leadership, and that has been a result of really bringing back the question of decolonized education and quality education at the same time. We also looked into the whole issue of youth unemployment or youth employability. We also look at youth entrepreneurship, because the two are the drivers of a socio-economic transformation to drive the exchange controls, to change that clear picture that I've displayed there of many of Africans who are staying in dilapidated areas and squalors, where their lives are really not thriving to change the material conditions of many. We also understand that in the process of doing that, change management must drive all our ethos. Why change management? Because change is not static. It must be a continuous process, and it must be the manner in which we drive, bettering the quality of life of many. Therefore, change management catalyze quality of life designed by Africans themselves. I will be done very soon. Now let's deal with youth unemployment stats that were released. You will see really a total blurry picture that the percentages are too high. If you check between the age of 25 and 34, those are people that were supposed to be active in terms of in the economy, but that percentage you see there, it's steadily, it's actually steady, not increasing much, but steady. It shows that there is still much that requires to be done in liberating those young people in order for them really to play a role in the economic sectors of the society, either through two key parts, which is employment or cultivating what we call entrepreneurship, in order to make sure that we change we really work on the exchange controls. Now, what have we done in the process in between these 5 years for convention? Some of the things were mentioned by the DVC here. I'm just going to really, and this is not all colleagues, it's just some synopsis in order to drive what we call scientific evidence of how we have evolved and changed over time to really seize those opportunities for young people. One argues that fundamentally we had almost 4.9 million young people who are not working. And that number slightly increased by 1.1% in the last quarter of 2022. Now, the reality is that that percentage of people who are supposed to be in the active sectors of the economy who are outside employment, it's a very worrying percentage that this convention, part of what it has to contribute is what do we do with this particular situation. And it shows that if something is not done, and I agree with Dr. Mzileni about interrupting the status quo to seize opportunities for young people. If we don't do that, both at the policy level and widening opportunity and cultivate that agency and bring the capacity for young people to design their own way of participating in the economy. What we have done is that through SEED program, which is a student employability entrepreneurship development program, almost thus far from 2020, every year we have close to 500 students, which are young people who get through that program and be prepared to thrive out there. And part of those students, young people, is the ones that DVC was talking about. We were able to be the first university which actually had what we call student entrepreneurship policy framework. We are the first in the sector. And that also vindicate our influence in the sector as Mandela University. And that we are very proud that I think DVC, the number of student business in our university has grown to almost 25, which we have also activated the George campus. Why we have done this is because we are saying we can't be able to arm students or young people with capacity to liberate themselves and we don't do anything about cultivating student economy on campus. That's a futile exercise. And at that regard, at that front, we are happy we've done something which is important to actually really promote the participation of young people. We had partnerships, but which we've been working with. Just to mention the few, NYDA has been with us in the province, EDHE, and all others. But what we've not done, we missed an opportunity of really getting into memorandum of agreement with these colleagues in order to really act collectively for impact in the work that we are doing. I'll skip this slide. Now, one of the things we have dropped, we just introduced in 2021, which was a resolution of 2020 convention, was to form a formation of Madiba's Youth Lab. We've done that. It is actually anchored to drive the very same question of decolonization, cultivate leaders that are thinking about the box, outside the box. And we catalyze it through connect, learn, and co-create. One of the things that drive us is that there's not a single individual who has all the wisdom to change the material conditions of the people. We have to coexist, and in our coexisting, we are able to establish our own ecosystem in order for ourselves to thrive. Hence, in what we have also initially then dropped was the issue of innovation. If you trace the history around the Industrial Revolution, you'll realize that when those revolutions from number 1, number 2, up to where we are, Africans are always closed out. So we can't design our own life. The innovation pitch was introduced to deal with the question of designing solutions for complex challenges of the society and yet introduce students to the space of entrepreneurship. In the program, we'll have one of the colleagues who are going to talk to us about the projects that they actually reimagined and what is it all about, the details will come. But what also inspires us is that we position ourselves as a university in service to society. And if you look at the mode list of quadruple helix, we'll tell you that all what you do must be driven by scientific evidence. It must also attract research in order to lead by evidence. It must also be able to really deal with the question of innovation, because innovation is part of redesigning, interrupting by the way, redesigning, I'm moving to the last slide, redesigning our lives. Now, we must be able to intentionally as well, which is the second helix, to directly respond to the need of the rapid change of the market. Now, this kind of youth that we produce must be able to fit in all walks of the society. And that will be done through critically cultivating leadership and multidisciplinary education that is responsive to those rapid change of the market. And lastly, a sociologist will agree with me that the society is organized in which, as South Africa, we become the worst unequal society. Now, that sociological architect tells us that there is something that we must do. So quadruple helix says, as you do it to untangle those complex challenges of the society. As I conclude, DVC, you spoke eloquently about directing our efforts towards research, particularly on policy matter. I thought of this overnight as well. It's one of the key issues. We've been doing research, but I think it is only now, this year, that there are two ways that we introduce writing about the critical work that we are doing and put it to the knowledge society. It's not enough. It was just the beginning. But all along, we've been critiquing what we call building capable state, because the capable state assists us to unleash opportunity, as an organized body, to unleash opportunities for young people. But that point is noted and is received warmly at DVC. This is just some of the activities that were happening in our incubator that the DVC had mentioned, which actually, I'm not sure whether if the convention did not light the torch, we could have thought of it. I do not know. I will leave you here, Dr. Mzileni, and just go and sit down and close my mouth for now.
Yeah.
Wasting time. I never. Brief. Ayi lezi zinto izinto zabantu abafundileyo lezi. Manje thina asifundile. Zizosidala inkinga lezi zinto. Once I want camera. I wish I needed that in Parliament. Sanibonani. Ninjani. TVC has helped me. I was wondering, sitting there, hey, ngoba ngiyaqala ukufika la ekhaya, how am I going to understand the protocols and all these things? And in case I don't recognize my floor reps and the house committees, you know, where I went to school, mongazwane floor rep amathishu wawungawatholi. So I must be sure not to, you know, ngizwile nje ungayirecognize the house com ukuthi wena ngeke uyithole ithishu. Thank you very much, Program Director, and I wish to recognize everyone. Ngokwey'khundla zenu, I do really want to say all protocol observed, and thank you for inviting me. I hear it's now the 10th, it's now the 5th year of the convention and 6th year of the convention. I hope this is not my only invite. Already seated here, I've learned quite a lot, and I do believe, of course, this is my last year in the agency. Our term of office comes to an end next year, November. I'm not sure, Doc, if you still remember. It's been 3 years now. It's been 3 years now. Yeah, I mean, it was fast, eh? And of course, I've got fewer hair on my head now as a result of being involved in youth development, at least at a structured level, because before I was in the agency, I've never worked for government in my entire life, and I still don't work for government. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've only held a job once in a private institution that did conflict management, which is why when I say to you I used to live in Somalia, you mustn't think, mhlawumbe, no, I didn't own a tuck shop in Somalia at the time. I really just was working in conflict management at the time. And there were certain things I used to believe about government, certain frustrations I have, which I still do. But obviously having come closer to the state and how the state is run, oof, all I can say is, oof. And maybe I wish to anchor my input on the experiences one has had being closer to decision making, not necessarily making decisions, but being closer to decision making. Because those of you who know the history of the NYDA, you would know that in the period leading up to the establishment of the agency, there were debates around whether we needed a youth ministry or whether we needed an agency. And those that argued for a ministry believed that a ministry dedicated to young people and their issues would be an all-encompassing solution. And those who argued against it, myself included, I believed that youth development is a function of each and every ministry in government. It's not a function of a ministry of youth, women, and people living with disabilities. And the creation of that ministry, we now have seen that everyone else seems to have washed their hands off youth development and said, ukhona uMama Nkosazana neteam yakhe. Before Mama Nkosazana was uMama Maite. And that for me is unfortunate in the sense that when you go to the Department of Transport today and you say to them, in youth development, what are your outcomes? They'll say to you, no, we cooperate with the Department of Youth, Women, Living with Disabilities, and that's them. So I do believe that one of the things we've got to engage now that we're in a university, I'm told, as Program Director eloquently puts it, the institution of higher learning has to provide solutions to society. Otherwise, there's no need for us to be here. And some of you are here, you are student leaders, you've got people that believe in you, whether they follow you on TikTok or not, but because they voted for you, they believe in you. And you've got to be able to provide solutions to them. And some of these solutions, and most of these solutions, are not financial. Most of these solutions that we require are about each and every one of us asking ourselves, are we really doing enough? And I often hear people speaking about the education system, basic education, higher education, but for me, education starts at home. There's no way you're going to make it in any form in the formal education if you don't have a strong family education system. And the education system of the family is an informal one. It's about you seated here because whether you have children or not, but there is a child in your ecosystem. Mshana wako, your younger siblings, whoever you are connected with in your ecosystem, there is a child within your setup. And what kind of information do you pass on to them? What is the nature of conversations that we have with those much younger than us, other than ukubathuma? It's very nice ukuthuma abantwana. Other than ukubathuma, you know, we are here speaking in a convention on youth development, but what is our role personally? What do you say to a young person where you are from? Those of you who've got people who are in high school, grade 8, grade 9, have we started having a conversation with them around the choice they're going to make in a year or two from now, in terms of which subjects to choose and why? I mean, we're not like our parents. You know, our form of information is not encyclopedia. We've got more sources of information. Are we talking about these things? Or we expect the teachers to just say, "I laws we are with maths lit, laws we are with mathematics." Because we're in a university, we all have seen the census report. It's for us to read and understand what it says about some of the outcomes that have things that have been achieved and how much work still needs to be done. Let me make an example, Program Director. One of the things that the report census says is that amongst young people, there is an increase in the number of non-communicable diseases, which are lifestyle induced. They're induced by the kind of lifestyle we lived. That's something to us as leaders of young people that has got to concern us. Because what it means is now that national government, as part of its provision, must now provide for gout management medication to a 34-year-old. And that comes at a cost to the national fiscus because of a lifestyle that we have led from the time una 24, you leave varsity and you get a job. Ka Standard Bank, you're an intern, you've got a little bit of disposable income, and your diet is dried meat, white bread, raw tomatoes, salt. If you are an alcohol consumer, Corona. If you are not, Coca-Cola. And I understand, allow me to call you comrades. I understand, comrades, that we you know, when we come to these conversations, mhlambe we expect big things to be said, but maybe before we even get to the big things, are we making the right decisions every day about our lives? Because it's good that 65 life expectancy has gone up from 65 to about 69 now. It's good. But what is the quality of life being led? And what decisions will we get there with this diet? You know, we Program Director, have become the youth of Monday therapy or Mukhodu Mondays, which is an excuse to drink on a Monday. We have something called Party on a Tuesday. We have something called Wine Wednesday. And then there's Ladies' Night Thursday. Now, you know, Friday, you know, Kali weekend, Habli Friday, is a new one. I mean, Kali weekend. Now the issue is, when you read the census, you get to realize that these behaviors and this lifestyle we're leading has a consequence. And the consequence is to both our health and the national fiscus. Because now, before you could patch potholes, you must provide gout management medication. Because the demand has grown. Because there's no way you're going to be on that diet for 10 years, ungabi gout. And the gout, we've always known of it as a sifo samakhehla, abantu abadala, the elderly who would have this who would require this medication. Of course, they would require it for what, 10 years maybe, and that's it. The demand used to be in your latter years. But now, you are going to have a young person at 35 who's going to require gout management and medication for the next 30, 35 years. What does that do to the fiscus? And student leadership seated here, maybe these are the conversations we need to have with young people who are already in the institution around the need to ensure that the investment already made in you finds you healthy enough for us to reap the rewards. You know, SASCO used to have, during our times, a program called Graduate Alive. I don't know if it's akhona in. You know, I haven't been a student in 3 years now. You know, now the important thing is, no, obviously, Pelamina, guys, no, comrades, you must accept mina ngifunde ngesikhathi ama organizations engakabi khona. You must accept. You must accept ukuthi sengikade ngafunda mina. You see, now if you say student organizations to me, you are speaking SADESMO, PASMA, SASCO, who else? You know, so even if it's not SASCO, but the student leadership has to have a conversation with young people around the issues of health, because these decisions have a financial impact, you know, and these decisions are also about the kind of resources that are spent on us and what do they do. You know, in South Africa, I'm sure no one disagrees with me when I say one of our biggest problems is youth unemployment. But if you come closer to this problem, it's not formal employment that is a problem in this country, because the percentage of people who are employed in the working population in this country rivals that of first world countries, who are touching 50% of the working population is employed, formally employed. Now that really, those kind of percentages aren't even seen in the States. But the problem is, in this country, if you look at the States, let me make an example with the States, 45% of the people are employed formally, either in the private sector, in the public sector, meaning you have a boss, you work for a company and whatnot. And then the other 45% roughly are employed in small to medium enterprises, in the gig economy, and in small companies that are run by families, employing 3 or 4 people, servicing a select market and whatnot. And then roughly the other people are not employed at all. The problem in this country is that we have, in the self-employment category, only 10%. So as we engage with young people, we must engage with the idea to try and direct them towards the self-employment route. But that's not going to happen when state procurement is run through the current legislation. It's just not possible. Because as long as state procurement runs on price, as long as 80% of the decision on where state contract goes to relies on price, it says established companies will always have the right of first refusal on any of the contracts. You know, the only way a 9CE construction company wins a tender kwa Sanral is if the big ones are occupied, they are too occupied, and they are not willing to tender for it. But any major construction, now these are big infrastructure projects, it's done by Greneka, WPHO, WBHO, Stefanot. You know, the only other time, because there's no way to compete on price with established companies. And today, a procurement bill, the amendment bill to the procurement is up for public comment. Young people are nowhere in the discussion. You know, the agency opens up and says to young people, look, guys, come in, give us suggestions. Here's an email address, give suggestions, but this is what we believe in. The engagement is not there. Now, I'm not in any way saying we must put the blame on young people, but I'm saying it's time for us in this convention, as leaders of students, to have honest conversations with ourselves about the role that we individually are playing in securing our future. The words said by Ubabu Jonas, I think it's important for us to internalize them. Because I'm sure we are thinking, I'm definitely sure about it. But what I worry is that we may not be acting in what we are thinking about. So it really concerns us, and we've come to participate in this convention because when we got the invitation, we felt, look, it's an important conversation to be had. And I'm very happy that this institution has done that. Some of the institutions, even where I went to school, doesn't happen that students are allowed to do business in the university. And I'm quite happy about that. And I hope as you interact with other deans of students, Dr. Sibake, you are going to engage with them because it really doesn't make sense why students can't do business in the university. It just doesn't make sense. As a result, they do it in the corners, a resi, you are selling there, but you know, it's very frowned upon. It's quite important for us to acknowledge this university, and in the 30 seconds I have left, I wish to say the following. The program director is is on point. I now know what he meant when he said we are going to catch up. Yeah. Let me say this, colleagues. Nothing worth having comes from a position of ideal conditions. We will never have that. Our conditions are not ideal, but we have it within ourselves if we understand and we put up the kind of effort, starting at home, starting in your ecosystem, to build young people of the future, because they are not going to build themselves. It's not going to be done by miracles, but we have to do it one step at a time. Every day must be better than the last day. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you so much, colleagues, for the opening session. We are going to do two things, colleagues. Ne? Firstly, let me apologize about the coffee break. It will be shorter. It will only take 15 minutes. So when you go for coffee, make your coffee, come back in 15 minutes. But I'll give you the times. Now, we only have 18 minutes for a conversation with the panel at the front. 18 minutes means 3 questions of 1 round. And 1 response each from the panel, and then we break for coffee. Again, ngiyacela, at the coffee break, 15 minutes, and then we come back. Are we together, colleagues? Fine. Now let's go to the conversation. Can I have the 3 hands I require from the floor to ask questions or make comments or make reflections. You'll be the first one, number 2, and then Molatelo, you'll be the last one. The mics in front of you are all working. Sure. Number 1.
Okay, thank you. My name is Tizo Hoy and I'm from Rose University. So DVC, in your address, you mentioned how you think it's important for us to have intercontinental exchange between different student leaders in the African continent. And then you also mentioned how you were almost like a champion for South African enterprises within the South African context, because you mentioned how a lot of the enterprises, like the informal businesses, are owned by foreign nationals. I think universities are supposed to be a transformative space, and also I think in the nature of transformation, you're supposed to be able to awake the consciousness of your students and also help them contextualize themselves within the domain that they maneuver and operate within. So just in terms of the idea of how do we also make South African students aware of the fact that they're also African students, and also how do we make these spaces also accommodating to African students, because a lot of the times the structuralism of it, or how they're structured, is that when you step into the spaces of black body, you're not necessarily seen as a black West African body or black South African body. The apartheid government, their violence wasn't just limited to the South African context, but also expanded within the Southern African region. So just maybe a comment or some way on that.
Lovely. Lovely. Number 2.
Thank you very much. Mine is just a comment, and I wanted to perhaps touch on student entrepreneurship within our campus, just because I'm seeing a huge growth, but I so wish that we can expand more on it, just because in our residencies, we have students who are cooking and selling muffins. If we can just open more of those spaces, hair salons in their rooms, if we can open spaces for such students. Some are doing haircuts in the rooms. And they're quite cheap. They're quite cheap. You see? So, and some have perhaps started businesses of shoe cleaning within our campus. And that business has bloomed. Just because some students can't clean their shoes. So it's entrepreneurship, and it expanded beyond what we have foreseen in our spaces. So I'm grateful for what university has perhaps opened for many of our students, especially in the entrepreneurship space. Just because you come here and study engineering, but you really didn't know that we have entrepreneurship skills within you. That can be expanded by the institution. I just wanted to touch on that. Thank you.
Lovely. Vladimir.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning. I just want to make a comment on what Mr. Chulisa said of the NYDA. He spoke about formal employment and it's steady, it's not, it's rising and stuff like that. But my question and sort of comment on that would be, how many of those people that are employed in the formal economy or in the formal sector are living hand to mouth each and every month? How many of those people spend their salaries on transport and lunch, etc., etc.? At the end of the month, they don't even have enough money to go and buy KFC. So if we're talking about statistics and saying that people are getting employed and stuff like that, we need to look at it holistically and not limited to 50% of people are being employed, because at the end of the month, people don't have money. That's why I think South Africa is in such a bad state. That's why I think that South Africa is a very depressed and sad nation. So I think the NYDA needs to also step in there and sort of help empower young people by, helping them gain access to funding so that they can empower themselves through entrepreneurship. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for these 3 disruptive questions and comments. I'm so excited for these questions. Very powerful. if really this model of a nation state did not exist, right, and we had a free movement of people in the continent and across the world, where we're going to be facing these challenges of modernity that we have at the moment. We have 56 member states in this continent. Do we need them? What is their purpose? I won't re-disrupt the questions. I'm just handing them over as they are to the panel. We will start this side from the NYDA. You can switch on the mic in front of you. Then we'll move to the acting deputy dean, then the DVC will close the session for us.
Yeah, thanks, Program Director. I think, my brother, I'm going to just respond to you. It's not that the work is enough or the money is enough. The point is there are people there's more than 40% in this country who are not economically active at all. And that is where my point was targeted, to say, to improve the likelihood of those people becoming economically active, we have got to direct, nudge, encourage as many young people to open small to medium enterprises where you're only targeted to employ 5 people. You don't have to worry yourself about it, just 5 people. And then someone else does the same, and someone else does the same. So the point is, that is how you lift up an economy, because to look at the answers at formal employment, I mean, those that follow big companies would know that in the past 3-5 years, major companies have been in trouble. Who would have known that Tonga Hewlett, the biggest landowners in KwaZulu-Natal, would be in trouble? During COVID, many companies, even Greyhound, the major bus company, were in trouble. So the idea of formal employment within the big companies, that space is not going to get larger. You have got to increase this space in order to be able to deal with it. Now, the issue around whether people are getting more money or they are spending more money, it also comes back to our idea of a living wage. I mean, that whole discussion, what is a living wage? How does a person determine that this is a living wage in an economy where eggs go up by 62% within a week? What does that mean? So we've got to get to a point where, in dealing away with, in increasing businesses, small to medium businesses, we are disrupting monopolistic elements of our economy, because it doesn't make sense that you would live in an economy of 60+ million people and have 4 banks. It just says to you, you're not getting value for money, because a country like Kenya, has 8 times the banks that we have. These are public banks. I'm just talking about public banks. So these are some of the things we have got to deal with, and we have got to increase our participation of small to medium enterprises, because they've got a disruptive element in the big monopolies.
Thank you. Acting Deputy Dean of Students, before you come in on that question, we also saw in the newspapers that you are appointing a moria of res managers. So just want to find out the plans of the university in optimizing and improvising the residence space to be this informal, thriving space of entrepreneurs, right? Of course, within the domain of discipline. We don't want it to be a Hillbrow, but we want it to be an organized, thriving space where people who have haircut ideas and so on can use the space as students for them to have a livelihood. Sure.
I wish I had time to also join the conversation also, but I If I get interrupted, I must interrupt.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we build the criticalization. All what I'm saying is that we need to define what is employment. Because I think the way we define it, we are going to be stuck in relying on what we call formal employment than ourselves, the creators of that employment. I want to leave it there. So get to the question that was really necessary for me to respond. The issue of demand for students to have their spaces for businesses on campus has to be controlled through space management. If you don't do that, you're going to create, call it pigsty, it's like in a Hillbrook, some sort,
Central.
central. So we know the demand is there because I know one gentleman who used to bake muffins in his room. And he was supplying the entire university and the business boom. One of the reasons we had the framework policy on student entrepreneurship was to alter disrupt the system and ensure that we positively ensure that it responds to the demand of the students. But the spaces are limited. We just have to reimagine. And of course, some of those spaces, they are entirely in the distances in our respective campuses. But the challenge is the space is limited. But it requires us to reimagine it as we move along. So I think in saying that, we've done our first process of really bringing conscious about entrepreneurship on campus. I think the demand that is there vindicates the work that we've done in cultivating student economy. And we're very happy as to what we've done thus far. We just had to really deal with the question of how do we deal with expansion to make sure. But one of the key issues that people don't realize is that our policy framework says we don't want to have Bernard as an entrepreneur on campus for the rest of his studentship. We're not growing him for him. We're growing him for the outer society. Reimagining that policy, we said, correct if I'm wrong, you can contact me. Bernard, you are allocated here because of your business plan, you meet all the requirements. 12 months. Because our ambition is to make sure that we've been looking at ShopRite, Checkers, and all of these hypermarkets. We want to get into Tumu's market in future at that scale. We are developing you and cultivate you to SM11. So the question of you saying, I'm having a business here on campus and park, it's something that really has to be altered. It delays progress for growth, for multiplier effect of young people who have to be in the business space. There was a very interesting discussion as well around, but let me leave it for another time. Let me save it and give back to you.
Thank you so much, Acting Deputy Dean. Deputy Vice Chancellor, maybe if you could close it off for us. You have 3 minutes.
All right, no, thank you so much. Let me respond to that question from Rhodes. Maybe I'll just use it to close this session. A very important question indeed. The fundamental challenge is something else. Like this nonsense that is happening in our country of saying fellow Africans are foreigners. This simply is because we have been dehumanized such that we no longer who we think we are. We are something else. That's what happens when a people is dispossessed of their culture. So that's why in our universities, fellow Africans are seen as foreigners. We even give them funny names. It's because of that, which is why part of our agenda and the agenda of this university, it has pronounced itself on it. We must rehumanize ourselves. We must rehumanize ourselves until we address this question. And it's an existential question. It's an existential question. Until we address the question of rehumanizing ourselves as Africans, we will continue to alienate ourselves and treat fellow brothers and sisters as foreigners. That's the fundamental agenda of education. The simplest and yet very powerful definition of education is a vehicle to establish and re-establish the values of a society. That's the basic definition of education. Not all these concepts that we are doing. It's all about establishing and re-establishing the values of a society. That's why, for instance, in America, if you look at what happens in Congress, for instance, the Democrats and the Republicans, they are divided every day. Sometimes divisions even within the Republicans, and sometimes within. But there's one thing they have in common. Once they talk about the American dream, why? Because the American dream is taught in the first class up to higher education. That as America we must dominate the world. Everything beautiful starts with us, as Americans. So for me, if we don't address that question of self-alienation, and if we don't reclaim our humanity as Africans, and if we don't center ourselves, if we continue to decenter ourselves, we will then continue to perpetuate instead of transforming the status quo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, this is how we're going to move. Now, firstly, there's a gift for the keynote address from the NYDA. The gift is coming up. And when you get that gift, the acting Dean of Students and the DVC will take a photo with you in front of this banner. So I invite everyone to please come this side. And I get to be the one who hands it over.
Thank you so much.
It's souvenirs from Mandela. It's not money.
I hope the value doesn't force me to declare. I hope the veil doesn't force me to declare.
No, we also.
Yeah. If you can move that way, because they are saying we must take a photo as the four of us.
Oh, okay.
Let me stand in the middle.
All right. When he takes pictures, it can be 20 minutes preparing us. He's very diligent with his camera. Thank you.
Okay. Last instruction. Can the panel please follow Queenie and exit on the right? You exit on the right, and then the rest of everyone in the room, please exit on the left. Grab your tea, and please come back to your seat at 11:45. Thank you very much.